Hey everybody, I'm going to continue my game reviews for Chess Boot Camp Live members, and this one comes from Jerry, who has the black pieces rated just under 800 against Chowdhury A, rated 904. Now Jerry has since gone over 900 himself. Okay, so we're going to go through the game. I know it ends in a draw, that's all I know about it. And we're going to look for what Jerry has missed in his thought process and his thinking. Okay, so we've got d4, d5, Queen's Gambit, c4. Now you can have Queen's Gambit declined here with e6. The Slav defense has c6. Here we have Queen's Gambit accepted. Wow. So Jerry's taken the offered pawn. Why not do that, you know? At the sub 1000 level, it's a free pawn. I mean, for me, I'd probably, my natural move would probably be this. And I'll tell you why. Because if takes and takes, and we're in the same situation, right? But apart from that, if they don't take, you play c6, you're blocking off this diagonal towards the king, and at the same time you're opening up, well, at least this diagonal for your queen. So that seems to me like a reasonable move. The downside of it is it does block off this knight from going there. Okay, but we have takes. And now e4, grabbing the center. All right, now, this is okay, but it does beg e5. So as a general rule, you want to play d6, but you can't because you've lost your d-pawn. So what would I have played here? I mean, this knight is okay. If they push d5, you can then come in here. This one, I would just expect them to play e5. But then again, I suppose you can come there to d5 as well. It doesn't push. White now develops. This is pretty solid play. Now knight c6, and okay. And now the bishop takes back. So we're in a situation where white has all the center and two pieces developed. Black has two pieces developed. But that surely just blunders. Oh no, it doesn't, of course. We've got two attackers on there. Doi. An alternative as well would have been to capture with a queen. Because then if queen takes, knight takes, then you're threatening c2 with a king rook fork as well. Okay, but this is good. Bishop comes out. You'd like to play that, but you can't because bishop just takes. So here, it's kind of tricky because that runs into f3. That's defended only by the knight. I don't know, I'd probably think about fianchettoing this bishop because it feels like this bishop doesn't really have much future on this diagonal. Especially if that pawn comes forward. You don't want to put it here. So, well, I suppose if bishop takes, you've got knight takes. That's fairly solid. Okay, so Jerry does play bishop e6. Problem with this move is it stops his pawn going forward, and the problem with that is it stops his bishop coming out. So, but the thing is, it does put the pressure on white. It's asking the question to white, what are you going to do with this bishop? Are you going to trade off? In which case, knight has to recapture. We trade off and knight recaptures, okay? But still, we've got a bit of a problem with our bishop. And we trade queens, rook takes, that's fine. So, situation is we're actually up a pawn. We've got a slow bishop here. So again, I would be thinking, you've got two options, right? One is the fianchetto option, and you should always remember you've got a fianchetto option. It's one way to get a bishop out into the board, right? You don't have to go via the center, you can go via the knight's pawn square. Another alternative is to develop this knight and then push the pawn somehow, and then get the bishop out this way. That's the thought. So let's see what white does. Okay, white attacks the knight. It'd be tempting to come back here or to here, both of which hit the bishop, which is now undefended. We're not worried about the g7 pawn. Okay, well here if bishop takes, e takes, that's not actually bad. That's not bad for black. because white's just given up his only bishop, and we've got a very wide board, very bishopy board. I suppose the point of this move is it takes these squares away from the knight. What would I have played here? I'd have probably just put pressure on the bishop, to be honest, but okay, bishop now takes, and we take with the e-pawn. This is okay. Okay, now, I think I'd probably go in with a knight, threatening this, but then we'd probably get an exchange of knights, so how about something like bishop b4? That's what I'd play. Okay, we have bishop c5. Bishop c5 is okay, so if the king castles that way, it's going to pin this pawn here, and it is lined up with the king, and it can always drop back to a square where it's defended by a pawn, so that's not bad. This one threatened to capture the knight and give white a couple of isolated pawns. We have castles, and now going in with the knight. I'd have probably castled myself at this point. I'm not sure, what's this knight doing? I mean, we're facing off against that knight, maybe proposing a trade. That's okay. Go in there, we trade off knights. Now again we're threatening this guy with messing up the pawns. So at this point in the game you need to be thinking about how to just get everything active and how can I secure a win. Black should be stronger here, and each player has only spent 5 minutes, it has to be said, out of an hour potentially. Black should be stronger. This pawn is pinned. Black has a bishop that can cross the entire board in one jump, whereas white, apart from the two rooks, white has a knight, so slight advantage there. I'd think about maybe dropping my bishop back here and just consolidating these pawns, block this one off, defend this one. This one's defended by its brother. The big question is here, do you actually castle at this point in the game? And you don't have to. It's all about king safety. I mean, one thing might be, I want to move my king back here and then centralise my rook. Because the thing is, if you castle now, you're moving your king right into this corner. And actually, particularly when we lose a rook or two from the board, you're going to want your king up towards the centre. So I'll see what happens. Okay, rook attacks bishop. Now I definitely drop my bishop back to b6 here, because it can also defend the rook, but it's also putting it on a defended square, it's blocking off the pawn, it's maintaining the pin. Okay, we have castles. Bishop b6 is still an option. King moves out the way, breaking the pin on the pawn. Ooh. I suppose that's not a bad move. I'd be tempted to swap the knight for the bishop, you know, at this point in time. Just to simplify. Swap the knight for the bishop. If he takes back, you can even trade rooks. Get rooks over to the middle, get the king onto here, which is critical. Get the rook onto the 7th rank, you're probably all right. However, you know, we're up one pawn, but we do have these double pawns. However, this pawn can't advance, so yeah, it's pretty balanced, I would say, right now. Now b5. We now have, we've still got two undefended pawns. I mean, previously there was only one that was defended. Actually, this one's still defended by the bishop, so technically this is the only undefended one. And now it is actually defended, but this one's undefended. So we've switched over. I think I might have been tempted to, instead of that, play rook f2 e8, and then you have a threat if your opponent spots it, right? Rook's here, you threaten to capture the knight, recaptures. Oh, you can't do that. Captures knight, recaptures, you can't take the pawn because rook takes rook. You lose. In fact, it's checkmate, because a rook has to come back and then white captures your rook and its mate, so that was half an idea. Alright, so rook comes up to d3, keeping it on light squares. This knight right now doesn't have any forward motion because of these pawns. However, all it needs to do is kind of change colour complex at some point, and it might start dancing between the pawns as well. We hit the knight. Okay, but you see that undefends this square and allows the knight into here. Although it's not the best place for a knight, but there he goes. Okay. Yeah, I suppose that's quite important actually because it defends the b2 square from this. And you can't make use of the discovery either, because there's a couple of things, but one is knight takes, and then if rook takes rook, knight takes again from there and recaptures. Another problem is simply rook takes rook, which is quite forcing. Rook recaptures and then knight captures, so you don't win anything. It's not a real discovery. Okay, rook f8. I like that. We're attacking this undefended pawn, maintaining some tension. c5 is also a playable move because it's defended by the bishop. Defends the pawn. And now c5, good. And that is surely a blunder. You've just blundered a piece. All right, game on. Now, how on earth do we manage to throw this away from this point? You've got a bishop, you've got a high-speed piece, long-range, high-speed piece on the board. All you need to do is simplify. Okay, well, let's see what happens. g5, pointless. Pointless move. Right, here's the thing. The king's absolutely fine there, right? No need to change anything in that corner. That corner's absolutely diddly. It's just absolutely fine. So all you need to be doing is think about, put both your rooks on the d file, slam a rook there, force a rook off the board, and simplify. This bishop's currently undefended, but because this pawn has advanced so far, it's hard to, it'd be nice if that pawn was back here, that pawn was back here and this pawn was here, everything would be solid. But hey, that's totally unnecessary move. You're just opening up stuff. I mean, it's all right. It's like your king can just dodge back there. But what you need to be doing now is to get one or both of these rooks off the board and then dance your way to victory. Okay, now the bishop's the only defender of this pawn, which is itself under attack. So the bishop really should stay on that diagonal. Okay, this is a defense. That's good. That's good. I actually prefer that. It's better. I'd also be thinking about a5, a4 at this point to cover all of these squares. He pushes. Now I just trade off the pawn. It's an awkward pawn. Right, that drops the pawn, and you're not even attacking this one because it's defended by a rook. So if pawn takes now, you've just given the pawn away for free. Trade rooks. Okay, that's fine. It's done us a favour. Now rook takes. Now I would simply drop my bishop back here. Okay, throw in a check. And we throw in another check. And we suffer to a king fork. Oh no! Kings can fork, boys and girls. Okay, but black does actually have an out here. Black can capture the pawn here, threatening the rook. Actually, it's not, because you take... King takes the bishop anyway, you take the rook, pawn takes, and we're up a pawn. No, we're not, we're down a pawn. So this is the mistake, right? This sequence was just disadvantageous for black. There was no reason here to go in with a check, because of this. You're inviting your opponent's king to move up the board, and kings can fork, and that's just really unpleasant. I think maybe one of the best options here is take a pawn, give up the bishop, take another pawn, and then you'd be one pawn up, because black would have 4, you would have 5, but still. Okay, so that's the strategic blunder here. All right, now with this, just take the pawn. Okay, we might even play that through. This doesn't do anything because that pawn is defended. You're attacking a piece that's defended, and you're leaving this piece with no defenders at all. Even here, a5 would be fine, I think. Pawn takes, bishop takes, and then you've got bishop and pawn all locked up. So I think this was just a weak move, and this was made in 13 seconds. And you've got 51 minutes left on the clock. So the thing to be doing here is to go, okay, that's a candidate move, right? What am I doing with that move? I'm attacking this pawn. Is the pawn defended? Yes, it is. What else happens with that move? Well, I undefend this pawn. Is it under attack? Yes, it is. So defend it twice. Problem solved. It's not a difficult equation, that one. But this was poor. And this was completely unnecessary. I can see the idea. The idea is you're skewering the king and you might win some pawns. But these pawns are not what's going to change the game. The game does not hang on these two, right? The game actually, more than this, hangs on, can you eliminate the threat of these two pawns? This is all covered. These guys are gonna run into a wall of 1, 2, 3, 4 black pawns. And remember, you've got a bishop at the end of the day. All you need to do is convert. Okay. So yeah, weak mistake, and we lose the bishop. All right. Check again. We do win a pawn here. Good. And now we have an extra pass pawn. However, look at White's king. Look how active it is. And whose idea was it to bring White's king into the middle of the board? Black's. That wasn't necessary. Okay, we've got a safe place for our king reasonably here. But what are we going to do now? We're going to drop back here, try and win a pawn. Andy's not going to get through safely with a rook and a king because this king is too far away. Now what you may be able to do is to trade off your rook and the a pawn for White's rook, but then you're in a kind of an equal situation where it depends on whose king is in the best position. So if your king was here, you'd be quite happy. You come round and start gobbling. So anyway, let's see what happens. Check. G4, okay. So that's now preventing this idea, because now this pawn could just move up. However, that one's still, ooh, hang on. We've got a hanging pawn. Take it. Take the pawn. Take the pawn. It separates these guys up. And this guy's not going to survive, but okay, so we push a5. Rook comes up. And now we're threatening to trade rooks. Okay, interesting. So this is where you have to pull your socks off and start using your fingers and toes. So king's going to move. If you in fact, king can't come here or here because you just lose the rook, so he's got to go to one of these squares, right? You trade rooks, king goes here. Andy goes up, king goes here. Andy goes up, king goes here. Andy goes up, king goes there, right? So you know that you can eliminate all this junk here and put that king on a2. And then it's a question of, well, how long is it going to take my king to get through the traffic? And unfortunately, the answer is a while because of this pawn here that's moved up to g4. Because you've now got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 moves to start disrupting White's position. And if the king is here, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, and he's solid. That's the problem. Now, ooh. Okay, so we're going to have to rewind a bit here. Okay, so I just messed up the board a little bit. Let's come back. King's going to have to move. Do we trade rooks? We do. And now, no, you don't want to move you can't move your king up there. Not really, because the king can't advance, right? And the idea of king up here and then maybe f5, pawn takes and you're in check and you have to retreat. So the king actually had to start coming around here. So I think that was a slight error. King comes across to attack Andy and takes with check. I guess now actually the king can slide through. That's actually not a bad idea. No, I get it now. That's not bad. Didn't need to move that pawn. The key thing is here you've got to take out this guy. What? No, because now we're creating a passed pawn for white. Okay, and it's 2 on 2. Interesting scenario, alright. And this is going to be a lot of messing about. We drop a pawn there. Oh, white! White could have just picked up the pawn, right? White picks up the pawn, you take, he takes. But even so, I think now is time, because we know what happens, it's a draw, okay, by insufficient material. So let's have a quick look at the game review, because I'd be interested to know what the machine thinks as well. And maybe you can try playing through your own game from a different point. So you can see here, oh, actually, black winning, black winning, black winning, black winning. Right. So actually, it didn't have white in a 1 position at any point. Oh, because we are black, that's why. We've got the black pieces. Forgive me, senior moment. All right, now, where are we looking? This is best, but now that's inaccurate because it allows a fork, yeah. So let's just go back. That's inaccurate, and then, okay, that's best. Because if rook takes, bishop takes, then we're okay. But if king takes d4, rook takes g2. Wow, okay. So the computer's actually saying that black is still actually winning here after this. Saying black is still winning because you're messing up the pawn so much. And now you've got 4 on 3 on this side. Very interesting. And you can work that one through. So rook takes is best. And rook b3 check is a mistake. Because yes, we're coming after this pawn, but king e2 now. That's what it's saying, right? King goes to e2. You come back with check, king comes here. And now actually white is slightly better. So just a kind of short-term positional issues here, really. Best move here was simply grab the pawn, as the machine says. Right, so let's go back to the line of the game. With this, you should have just grabbed the pawn and threatened this pawn. And we should have been all right. Now, sometimes you've got to be a computer to figure this stuff out. King goes there, we grab a pawn. That's still okay, we're still minus 1.5. So we still should be all right. And that's forced. And that's actually a blunder. Wow. Oh, so yeah, free pawn. Free pawn, and we missed it. And that's a mistake. Should have grabbed the free pawn. That's what I was saying. Grab the free pawn. It was It was you know, just crying. It's so natural to take that, and then you could come back here, threaten both of these pawns, maybe even protect the a pawn there. And that's a mistake. Again, it's say take the free stuff here, and that's great. Okay, and now it's saying king f8 and you're winning. But you have to come around the long way. Right? This is a mistake. And now it's actually quite drawish. h5 is also good here. Interestingly, It's takes, and then you can come and actually just remove that pawn, and then you're through. So yeah, this is not the way to go because there's 2 pawns on it. Right? However, what the computer's saying is actually this one, and I didn't even think of that one. Right? This one, either you take and he takes and he's got an isolated pawn, or if he takes, your king comes up and wins. So, but this was definitely a strategic endgame error. Now, that kind of jumped out to me because I'm saying, well, where's the king going to go from here? Okay. However, h5 maybe still an option. So he plays this. Oh, f6 f5 best. Blunder, should have taken with g. What? Because of king of... Okay, so now we dodged through, and that's actually what was played in the game. Okay, and look, wow, you're still -7. So this is still winning. Now, king best move, and that is simply a blunder. That is actually the move where you throw it away. Because what you have to do is you have to eliminate these. So it's saying just bring the king through, right? Saying king e5, king c4 then, it's saying that that king would actually have to ignore the a pawn. Wow. But this is a blunder. Takes. Best move? But it's saying actually everything's drawn from this point in time. That's a weird one. Because right here it's saying actually king e5 is best. Go figure. But yeah, very, very, very tricky one. So in terms of the review, you actually grind out quite a decent advantage earlier on in the game. But there's definitely some fundamental kind of endgame issues going on here. You know, you need to be thinking, okay, look, let's simplify the whole endgame problem. And although endgames can look a lot simpler than middle games, very often the margins are so fine that you have to go, okay, look, if I'm going to win this game, what has to happen? So either I'm going to get this guy up there, or I just need to eliminate, really, if I can get into his pawns and start gobbling up a couple of pawns, I should have a strong chance. This is a really interesting one. And now it's just completely drawn all the way, basically, is what it's saying. So, fascinating game, I have to say, fascinating game. A few clear mistakes. I think the one that really jumps out to me is at this point in the game, where we're completely dominant, and this is. I mean, it only says it's an inaccuracy, but you're losing a piece. Okay, and again, grab the pawn, but here, just take the free stuff. Why not? It's free, a free pawn. So, you know, one thing to be really working on, especially also, it's the pawn that defends this. So it leaves that pawn undefended. It leaves that one completely vulnerable as well. So, yeah, if in doubt, take the free stuff. Don't get clever. Right, so king moves. We grab this pawn. That's okay, but we've gone from a position where we're minus 3.69, if we proceed this way, to being clever. And again, do you see how black's moves have invited this king to take a dominant and central position in the board, whereas black's king is still here. So that's one thing to think about in the endgame. Activate my king, centralize my king. This is okay, and you're still in a winning position. And here again, free stuff, right? So, one thing to take away, if there's free stuff, get it. That was just a waste of a move, because what you're basically doing here is you're just moving this pawn towards this king. Now, what you'd like to do is to say, okay, I'm going to come and start eating pawns here, right? Because you see, look, if you take there, in fact, let's go back to this position. Right, so from So from here, okay, so what you can do, you put it up on the analysis board like this, you say practice versus computer. Okay, this is what I recommend. Go to this exact position. I'm going to switch sides. And we are black. Okay, and now we go here, right? So we capture that. He goes there. Here, Rook H2 is best. Okay, but now we get another pawn. There maybe. And, you know, oh no, now he can capture our pawn, you see. Right. But, you know, go to this point and play it through. And what's interesting is that Stockfish will not play the same move every time. And if you find it too challenging from, let's say, you know, this position, you can also go change bot as well and get rid of Stockfish and just say, I'm going to do it against Emir at 1000 rated. I'll switch sides, and here he goes this, I'm going to go here. Oh, so you see Emir's, oh, what? That's a blunder. Oh, hanging rook. Anyway, but the point is, take your time, right? Practice this endgame, drill it, because when you're in a winning position and you find yourself drawing, it's great to, you know, to be able to get tips and for someone to say, this is what I see, but you can't do that all the time. So be your own coach and use the computer analysis in this way, and use the computer as a trainer to help you to finish it. That's the point of the video that I made just recently over the weekend, is that you really can use this practice versus computer feature and get it to use it as a trainer. So you drill that position, that kind of position, and that's how you actually learn, okay, now I understand what's important in the position. Yeah, and you can only do that through motion. It's very, very hard to look at the computer analysis, the game report, which just goes, should have done that, and you go, well, why? And it goes, you know, it's a long line of moves, and you go, well, I don't understand that. But actually doing it, moving the pieces yourself against Stockfish or against one of the other bots, definitely a good way to learn it. So that's something I'm going to be doing more and more going forward as well, and probably just trying to play less, but then when I blunder and make mistakes, drill why I did that to try and fix the holes. Otherwise, you're just pouring water into a bucket full of holes. You know, you're not going to get very far with that water. Much better to spend your time plugging the holes and then fill it with water. Okay, so I hope that's been useful for you and everyone watching. And thanks for watching. See you later.